Hello everybody, this is Valerie Greenwell and welcome to Quilt Artistry. Today I'm going to be talking about attaching your binding using a serger. It's really quick, it's very easy, and I don't know that I will do binding any other way. I'm going to walk you through what size to cut the binding, what stitch to set your machine to, and then how to attach it. So with that, let me get the camera turned around and I'll show you what we've got. Okay, so here is my serger. It is a Bernina L890. The stitch that we're going to use is called a 4-thread overlock. Although I'll be using black fabric, I'm going to be using blue thread to make it easier for you to see what I'm doing. The black on black, for me, it blends in so well that it's hard to see the stitches, and I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. And I do have my cutter on, and I have my guide set right to the absolute edge. Now, even though I have the cutting blade turned on, we will not be cutting much off at all, very, very little. So first, let's talk about what the stitch is going to look like when you sew it. So with a 4-thread overlock, I want to put this on here so you can see, that stitch is almost a perfect 1/4 inch. You can see right there. So I have cut my binding at 2 3/8. Okay, so I have all of my binding strips cut, and I have sewn them all together using the 4-thread overlock stitch. If you are a person who really prefers the look of a mitered binding, you can absolutely do that. With your binding all sewn together, you're going to press it just like you would in half to create your strips, and this is what it'll look like when you're finished. Okay, so here you can see I have my binding strip folded in half, and I have clipped the top end of it, the tail of it, about halfway through the center of my quilt there. And then again down here, I want to leave a section of this unsewn so that I have a place to attach my ends when I come back around to it. What you're going to need is you're going to need some sort of a fabric marker or a pencil, something that is erasable or removable. Here I have this little tiny, like a chalk pencil. Okay, so here you can see I have my guide set right to the furthest edge that I can get it. My blade is engaged. So we're going to sew right down this edge here. So as we get to the corner, we're going to do a little bit of marking. You're going to draw a line at the bottom edge of the quilt. Then you're going to draw a line a 1/2 inch above that line. And then you're going to draw a slight angle right off the edge of that. Now you're going to stitch down to this point. When you get to this point, you're going to pivot and you're going to stitch right off the edge. That 1/2 inch line is right in line with my needle. Then you're going to pivot that edge, that corner of the quilt, and you're going to stitch right off the edge. Stitch off and leave yourself a little bit of a tail. Now that gives us a pretty good 1/4 inch where we can flip and fold the binding as usual. Now this part is going to be a lot like doing a regular binding. You're going to flip the binding the other direction, like this, and you can do like a little finger press if you like, just like that. You want that to be right into the corner. And then you're going to fold that over just like you normally would, and you're going to have it all lined up right here along the edge. Then you're going to line it up underneath your presser foot, and you're just going to start right down this entire line. So we're just going to continue stitching down this side until we get to the corner, and then we're going to mark the next corner just like we did the first one. Okay, so I'm back at the next corner, and you can see I have everything marked. I have the bottom edge marked here. I have this line marked 1/2 inch up, and then I have drawn a little tiny angle from 1/4 inch. We are 1/4 inch in and 1/4 inch down, and so I'm going to stitch to here. I'm going to pivot and turn it, and then I'm going to stitch right off that edge. So again, this first line that we marked at a 1/2 inch, we're going to stitch all the way till that line, this line, lines up with where your needle is, okay? And now I'm going to I'm going to lift the presser foot so that I can stitch right off that edge. So now we're going to stitch right off the edge of that. Okay, so you can see where that angle starts. So now we're going to go ahead and fold that binding back. We're going to flip it this way and then fold it back just like we do when we're doing a regular binding. So the key to doing this successfully is to make sure that when you flip this binding back this way and you make your mitered fold, you want to make sure that that lines up perfectly with the corner. Okay, so here you can see I have it all folded back and clipped into place. So for those of you that might be new to using a serger, I thought I would give a little bit of an explanation real quick about the front of your foot here. So this line right here, you can see it's like a little divot. That is where your blade is. This first line here lines up perfectly with your rightmost needle, and then the second one lines up with your second right needle, and then each one of these will line up with the 3 left needles. I want the fabric for the binding to line up right here on this edge, and then anything that falls to the right of that will be trimmed off. It's very, very minimal, but it's nice that the serger has a blade and can do that for us. It cleans it up and it looks amazing when it's done. Okay, so I'm just going to repeat that process until I get to the end of the quilt. So as you can see, I'm getting really close to the end where I started. Here's my little folded mitered edge, and I've got about the length of one t-shirt left. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch right off the edge, just like I did at the corners. And I'm going to give myself a little bit of a thread tail, and I'm going to cut that thread. Okay, so at this point you have a couple choices. You can either take it to your domestic machine and make this join like you normally do and sew it together, or you can do it all by serger. I am going to do it with the serger. Okay, so here I have my end, and you can see I have my miter there, and I have it clipped. What I'm going to do is take this end and I'm going to tuck it inside my little miter here, just like this. Here you can see I have my binding tail tucked into my folded mitered edge, and I put little clips in there to hold it. Now I'm going to come back in here to where I jumped off the edge, which was here. So I'm probably going to start back here just a little tiny bit. I'm going to start here and I'm going to continue down and serge all along this edge, and then I'm going to stitch all the way down to the end, which is where I started, which is down here. So as you can see, I'm getting back to where I started my first stitch. What I'm going to do is go ahead and stitch all the way down the edge of this, and probably overlap maybe about an inch or two. Okay, so what you can do now is go back and trim all of these threads to about maybe an inch or so. Okay, so I flipped it over. Let's take a look at these clean stitches. Look how nice the edge of that looks. It's just absolutely perfect. And when you look at this side, look how clean that looks. It's just a very, very nice look. And of course, it's very secure. Once you have the binding attached, then we are finished with the work on the serger. And at this point, you can either finish your binding by hand, or you can take it to your domestic machine and sew. Let's zoom in and take a look here. See how cleanly that miter is going to come together in that corner. It's absolutely perfect. I'm lining up this binding edge right at the edge of where those serger stitches are. And it's going to be perfect. Then you'll be able to stitch this down, whether by machine or by hand, either one. But it's nice and full. It's just the perfect size, and it's really going to look nice. All right, so that's going to wrap it up. Everything looks amazing. The stitches look great. The edges look great, and it was super easy to do. Overall, it looks really, really nice. I like it, and it's very quick and it's secure. So if you're making a quilt that's going to get a lot of use, especially by kids, and get used a lot and possibly washed a lot, this is a really great way to be able to finish those edges and have them stay secure. So that's a wrap for binding by serger. Thanks for hanging out with Quilt Artistry.